Welcome to the Vibration Fit podcast. I'm Vanessa,
And I'm Jordan.
and today we're going to be talking about vibrational standards.
Totally. I'm excited about this.
So, the reason we want to talk about this today is to capture our own clarity around what you were talking about last week with
Yes.
a story that relates to this. So, if you want to jump into that.
I was actually on a commercial roofing job for one of the businesses that we work with our company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cool. Great set of contractors out there working. And I was talking to my business partner about standards. And I distinctly remember saying, if we don't establish standards as the company, then who is?
Nobody.
Nobody. Yeah. So like basically like we have to establish standards. And
Right.
that was one of the reasons why I was on this job is this was a fantastic contractor. He had done a lot of really great work. And I wanted to see how he was going about doing things so that I could document best practices and show other people how to also succeed. Right.
Right.
So essentially going forward, whenever other contractors are engaging with our product, I want them to have our standards in place so that they know this is how it's done, or this is the minimum viable product based on, what they say the standards are.
Right.
So essentially, as a company, if you don't establish your standards, nobody will. And that got you and I thinking about vibrational standards. And in your own life, committing to living dominantly in an above the green line emotional state, which we'll talk about what that means, is a choice. And it's a standard that you have to adopt for your own life. No one else can adopt it for you.
Yeah.
You're the one that has to consciously choose it.
Yeah, no one else is going to come in and be like, wow, I see that you've been living like 70% of your life in depression or in anger or rage. Like, let's fix that. Let me bring you above the green line.
Your emotional state is not meeting my vibrational standard, and I need you to raise it.
Yeah, so if you don't set these vibrational standards for yourself, then what happens is you just tap into mass consciousness, mass vibration.
Totally.
Which is not usually above the green line.
Yeah, mass consciousness is kind of that pool of collective meh thought that's out there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like where dominant consciousness is. And that's definitely not where you want to land if you want to consciously create a reality that's really amazing.
Really
satiating in
feels
all
really
areas
good.
of your life.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the only way essentially to rise above mass consciousness and to create a life on purpose is to establish a better vibrational standard and live above the green line. Most people don't live up there dominantly, but you definitely can just by choosing better.
Right. So we're actually going to share with you the how to establish a vibrational standard in your own life. And like you already said, you basically went over step one, which is just setting the standard for yourself.
Absolutely.
Like if you don't know you have a standard, then you don't know that you're trying to uphold anything in your life.
Absolutely. And you don't have anything to run your dominant emotional states through or your
Right.
dominant thought processes through because you haven't necessarily established, you know what? I choose to live an above the green line life. There's actually something magical that happens whenever you establish a standard around what emotional states you're going to allow to perpetuate themselves. And more clearly stated, the dominant thought patterns that are active in your mind that the emotional states that you're experiencing are a response to.
Totally.
So I feel like you could speak a little bit to the vibrational resources we have on the website to talk about the emotional guidance system and what the green line actually means in terms of that actual chart.
Yeah. So at vibrationfit.com/tuning, we actually have a bunch of resources. You can either tap into our processes or our frameworks, and the emotional guidance scale actually lives under the frameworks on the website. So if you go there, you can actually see a graphic of what above the green line is for us at Vibration Fit. And I love how you explain it, actually. So if you could talk about
So this is actually a funny
story
of how the line came to be.
Right.
So
How it was born.
How it was born. So basically what happened is we asked our graphic designer to make an emotional guidance system chart similar to the Abraham Hicks
Emotional
system.
guidance scale.
Yeah, so the scale itself actually came from Abraham Hicks. But we asked him to make this, and we gave him a color palette, and we said that we basically wanted it to go from this color to that color, and we wanted it to be a spiral
Right.
on both sides.
And it followed the Roy G. Biv
Yeah.
colors scheme. So it follows the rainbow colors all the way up.
Yeah, so right there at boredom and contentment, like basically where
Abraham Hicks calls it the tipping point.
correct, where the tipping point lives was actually the color green. So like whenever we made that line, I just started saying the green line. And we just started saying
And
that's above the green line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's below the green line.
We want an above the green line kind of life.
Yeah, we want above the green line kind of life. So if you adopt that very simple visual into your mind, then you can basically see, I want to live in these elevated emotional states where I feel amazing, where I feel awesome, where I'm trending towards empowerment, where the entire universe feels like it's at my back and I've got a tailwind and I'm moving towards the things that I want. You know, that's what that above the green line feels like, that above the green line life feels like.
Right.
So for me, I personally have made the commitment to strive for an above the green line life, which means I have an emotional standard, which means I have a vibrational standard, which means there are only certain thought patterns and thought loops that I'm going to entertain in my day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year activity and allow to perpetuate themselves in my mind because they have to meet a certain criteria to stay in my head.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and if it essentially, if I've got thought patterns and thought loops that produce a below the green line emotional states, I don't tolerate that.
Right. Yeah, totally. And I can honestly say the majority of our life is above the green line. We, of course, like all humans, dip below the green line, but it's very obvious when we do.
Yeah.
Like even our kids will be like, Daddy's mad.
Daddy's got daddy face.
Yeah, like Daddy's got daddy face. And it's so infrequent that when that happens, it's like, it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, this is how Daddy always is. It's just like Daddy's mad about something.
Yeah.
But they know it's okay because he's going to find his way back up above the green line.
Yeah. And generally, whenever they do recognize that and they sort of call it to our attention, I'll actually voice it rather than like keep it within myself and way down.
Yeah.
Like I'll literally say, yeah, son, I feel angry right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I'm focused in this way.
Yeah.
But I'm working on focusing in a better way. And I'm definitely going to feel better soon. And I show him the process as often as I can of
Mhm.
intentionally being in one emotional state, but migrating myself with intention to another emotional state based on what I'm focused on, how I'm focused on it, and the meaning I'm giving it.
Totally. Yeah, I actually did that the other day. I was asking our 5-year-old to put on his clothes and his shoes and get ready so we could go to the pool. And he just wasn't doing it. And so finally, I said it in a louder voice with a less nice tone. And he ran away and said, I don't listen to mean mommies. So,
you were a mean mommy.
I was mean mommy.
Yeah.
So we actually have these personas in our house. Like I call that version of myself mean mommy.
Yeah.
And after that happens, I go to the kids. And in this particular instance, I went to him and I said, Oliver, I'm really sorry I raised my voice. It's me, 1 on 3. It's just mommy with 3 kids. And I'm trying to do the best that I can in this moment. And I didn't mean to yell at you. I'm sorry for that. So
Yeah.
I hope you'll forgive me.
Yeah. And our kids are really great about not tolerating thought patterns that make them feel bad.
Right. Oh, yeah. They're extreme. Kids are wonderful at that. They're
Yeah.
amazing at it.
They
But
bounce back so fast.
Right.
They're like, I am not even going there right now. That feels bad. And I'm going to give myself a breather. Like, they're really fast about moving themselves back above the green line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they have like a catapult. Whenever they go below the green line, it catapults them all the way back above the green line.
Yeah, well, and you know what? I'm glad you mentioned this because I believe that we're naturally born with this standard.
Right.
I believe we're born knowing that it's right that we feel good.
Yeah.
You know, knowing that we came here to experience life in that way where we're positively expecting and we're empowered and we feel awesome and we've got this energy to move forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we intended whenever we came. It's not until we get conditioned by society and mass consciousness that, well, you know,
it's unlikely that's going to happen.
yeah.
Got to
yeah.
brace yourself.
Got to brace yourself for life that's coming. You know, actually, let's just go ahead and stop expecting too much now.
Yeah.
You know, we've had this conversation
stop the
before.
desire.
Yeah, let's just try to slow down the desire so that you're not going to feel so bad whenever it doesn't happen. And the kids are just sitting there going like, what are you talking about? It's not going to happen. That's crazy talk.
One of my
Like-
favorite things that they do whenever we give them a choice, like, would you like chicken nuggets or pizza?
Mhm.
Their answer is always, I would like chicken nuggets and pizza.
Yeah.
Or would you like to go to the park or to the pool? I would like to go to the park and the pool.
Yeah, they're very both and. Like, our kids are very universally savvy. They're like,
Yes.
oh, yeah, I live in a both and universe. So, yes, I'll have the chicken nuggets and I'll have the pizza.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll have the splash pad and I'll have the pool. Thanks, Mom. What a great idea. Let's get going on this.
Yeah, that was a wonderful idea, Mommy. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, it's their greatest teachers. They're so good at reminding us of these things, but
Yeah.
they have those vibrational standards and they don't even know it. It's
Right.
just intrinsic in their nature.
Absolutely.
We're the ones that have been beaten out of that standard over time.
Yeah, and ultimately, I've heard statistics of the number of people that actually have like physical written goals. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where like Harvard did a study that said the 3% that had written goals were more successful than the 97% that didn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But combined.
Yeah.
And I think it's just interesting. We go through life and the strong majority of people, especially operating in mass consciousness, don't have any sort of a vision for what they want their life to actually look like. So if you have no idea of what a successful life for you looks like,
Mm,
then how could you possibly establish a standard
yeah.
around anything? So for me personally, I believe that the quality of your life is the quality of your emotions.
Right.
And I believe your dominant emotional state is how I would define success in my own life, at least.
Mm,
When I'm above the green line dominantly, then that's winning.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And if I've got a standard that holds me to that, then it essentially takes me to the next steps that we'll talk about. But essentially, once you have the standard, then you actually have sort of a line to gauge experiences and thoughts around.
Right. Yeah. If you don't have a standard, then you become someone else's, you fit into somebody else's standard.
Right.
So whether it's a job or a relationship or whatever, your body, you just fit into where somebody else says your standard is. You
Yeah.
just kind of mirror them instead of really looking internally and being like, well, what is it that I want? What is it that I would want to set as my standard? What is it that I can strive for?
Yeah.
Because that is fun. It's really fun being the conscious creator of your reality.
Totally.
And if you don't have that, then you're just kind of drifting through life.
Yeah, 100%. So let's just say number one is make the commitment to live an above the green line life. If you're going to establish a standard, then it really comes down to, you know what? I'm going to live in these higher emotional states.
Mhm.
And I know that I can actually think in ways, focus in ways in this vibrational universe that produce those emotional states within me.
Right.
Because an emotional state is ultimately just an output, and the input is your dominant thought patterns and their corresponding vibrations within you.
Mhm.
So essentially, if you think about what emotion actually is, it's really just a vibrational indicator letting you know whether what you're focused on is in harmony with how source is focused on the same subject in your reality.
Right.
So you can go your whole life focused on a subject differently than the infinite part of your consciousness and live a below the green line emotional state your entire life.
Right.
Or you can allow those to merge and focus on your reality and these different things similar to the way your source is seeing it. And you'll have a positive emotional response, an above the green line emotional response to that. And you can go your whole life living in bliss and harmony and empowerment, feeling great. So since it is a choice
Mm-hmm.
and you ultimately do control what's going on in your mind and what you focus on, then making that distinction, I think, is really important.
Totally. And that's the ultimate freedom in life, is realizing that you do have complete freedom over your thoughts,
Yeah,
because those thoughts are what become things.
totally. So let's talk a little bit about essentially what you do when you find a point of focus
Mm-hmm.
in your reality that feels good,
Mm-hmm.
and what happens whenever you find a point of focus in your reality that feels bad.
Yeah.
So when you are in a situation
Mm-hmm.
and you're focused on it in a way that puts you above the green line, what do you do? And when you're in a situation and you focus on it in a way that puts you below the green line, what do you do?
Yeah, totally. I'd like to also share an exercise that I've been doing recently that's helped me a lot. And first, I'd like to state that, like, as the founders of Vibration Fit, I feel like our standard is extremely high
Mm-hmm.
vibrationally and emotionally. Like, we hold our bar really high for our
Totally.
emotional state. So we can also be extremely hard on ourselves
Mhm.
whenever we fall below the green line.
Totally.
And an exercise I've been doing with myself to kind of alleviate that and just remind myself, like, you don't always have to be above the green line. It's not about, like, being conscious isn't about always being above the green line.
Right.
It's about empowering yourself whenever you fall below the green line. So something I've been doing whenever I find that I'm thinking thoughts that produce emotions that make me feel not so good, I've been putting like a physicality to those thoughts. So I'll acknowledge, I'll have an awareness of the feeling, and I'll remind myself, like, this is a familiar space. And I almost see it as like a room, a
Yeah.
physical room.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell myself, just because I'm in this room right now doesn't define me.
Right.
And it also doesn't mean that I have to return here.
Right.
I can return here. And if I do, that doesn't make me any less than or say anything about myself.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that I'm feeling the same emotion.
This is not my permanent address.
Right. Yeah, this is not my permanent address. I do not choose to perpetuate this.
Right.
And I've also been telling myself that the awareness that I'm in that same room is progress.
Huge progress.
Huge progress.
Absolutely.
So now I'm sitting on the couch in that same vibrational room that I don't want to perpetuate, but I have a choice.
Right.
I can open that door and walk out of that vibration into something else.
Totally. And that's actually such a great exercise for the how-to on really establishing this standard and then living in accordance with it.
Right.
Is when you have a dominant thought process and it's been there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, if you look at how you become you, the first couple steps on that little chart are thought that you continue to think becomes a belief,
Mm-hmm.
right? So essentially, a belief is just a thought that you continue to think.
Right.
And then a belief that gets validated by manifestation becomes a truth. So that
Mhm.
becomes true for you. And then you pop it into your identity. And now,
That is you.
that is you. So
Yeah.
it becomes really easy to repeat that thought loop. And a lot of times what happens is it gets attached to like an I am. So for example, let's just take a positive example of how this would work.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody says, you know what? I'm an abundant person. That's a thought. I'm an abundant person. Things generally work out for me. When it comes to money, it's always kind of come to me easily. And whenever I've needed money, it always shows up. And there's really no limit to the quantity of money that exists in the universe. It's flying by my ears right now with bank accounts and digital currencies and all this crazy stuff. It's, pretty much there for me. And they just keep activating that same idea. Well, if you continue to think, you know what, I'm generally an abundant person. I'm an abundant person. I'm an abundant person. I'm an abundant person. Abundance flows to me easily. And you ultimately come to believe that because it's a thought that you just continue to think, then manifestation is going to show up that validates that belief.
Right.
Once that manifestation shows up, say it's in the form of actual money, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, you know what? This affirms that I'm an abundant person thing.
That actually reminds me of Wayne Dyer. Someone told me a story the other day how every day when he went out for a jog, he would always find money.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Totally.
And then he finally cashed it in and it was hundreds of dollars.
Yeah. It's like he would just find like coins or bills. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I've heard him tell that story before. And so now that is manifestation validating belief.
Right.
And so that's true for him. And now that truth becomes a piece of his identity. And then he can legitimately say, I am an abundant person.
Right.
That's a piece of my identity.
Money just always flows to me.
Money just always flows to me. It's just like
I'm a money magnet.
I'm a money magnet. It just happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
So when you can see that flow out,
right,
then you can see that all identity and all manifestation has a genesis in thought.
Mm-hmm.
So that dominant thought pattern that you're discussing with these rooms, I'm associating that room to a thought pattern.
Right.
So if you return to that room, it's basically activating a thought pattern that you've activated before. And now having awareness of this above the green line life experience, you can sort of categorize that in a way. There's an address to it. There's like a physical address to it.
Yeah, there's a very precise feeling.
Right.
And that's what I've been really fine-tuning lately is just recognizing these precise feelings that I have. And that's how I related it to these rooms because it's like, wow, this is like a very precise place that I keep returning to.
Well, and vibrational signatures.
Yeah.
So that's the great thing about a vibrational signature. We live in this beautiful vibrational universe where things can be infinitely complex, but still independently unique.
Right.
So a vibrational signature would be what's active within you that then essentially that feeling is attached to, right? So you feel that same thing, that essentially emotional state is generated by a vibrational signature that's active within you.
Right.
And that's so good because this is where I really want to go with this whole conversation is you being you.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you do whenever you identify a room like that, a physical feeling like that. You go to work on it. You're like, you know what? This doesn't meet my standard.
Yeah, this is not what I choose for me.
Yeah, this does not make me feel good. So what am I going to do? You're going to intentionally walk out the door. But what that actually looks like in your life is reframing the idea that's producing the emotional state to begin with, reframing the thought process that's active. And if it's a dominant thought process, if it's a room you go to a lot, that's just a dominant thought process. All it is it feels like home, it's because you go there a lot.
And some of these you don't even recognize are below the green line until all of a sudden it hits you and it's like, whoa, it feels normal to me to be there because it is part of my emotional home.
Right.
So it's almost like you've become numb to it over time or you've made that your normal. And then all of a sudden you'll recognize, you know what, that doesn't fit in with my vibe anymore.
Right. Or all of a sudden you establish a vibrational standard for your life.
Right.
And now you actually start to notice it.
Yeah.
Because you're like, wait a minute.
Right.
That's not in harmony with this new choice that I've made.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So then once you recognize that, you can make that conscious choice to be like, all right, I'm in that room again, but it's okay.
Right. And I think it's funny because I'll see you actually like here comes a pin, like there'll be like a pen and a notepad, and you'll kind of sneak off by yourself at the kitchen table or in the office or in the desk in our bedroom, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll start to write things out, right? And I think that's really powerful that you acknowledge it and you capture it, you figure out what's going on there, and then you literally have processes in place to reframe the topic, like the subject matter of what triggers that.
Right.
I see you do that and you rebuild it. So the cool thing is that vibrational work that's being done whenever you're in that room and you don't want to stay in that room can be built on. So let's say you go do the vibrational work, and I've got a great story about this. But let's say you do some vibrational work on this, and then you feel better. But that's been active for a while. That room's been there. You got the key. The key's worn out, because you've been in there a lot, because it's a dominant thought pattern.
Yeah, you go there on autopilot.
You go there on autopilot.
You get off of work and you automatically drive there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one of those things that you just kind of find yourself fading into or falling into.
Yeah.
So the cool thing is whenever you find yourself there again, you go, wait a minute. This is that familiar feeling again. That's that thing. That's that room. And I like how you're doing this physicality thing in your head where you're like, I'm in that room again. So the cool thing is whenever you're in that room again, you can now go glean on that previous vibrational work that you've done, that reframe that you've been working on, and go, where did I leave off on this whenever I felt better about this last time? And you can give yourself a kickstart, or you can give yourself momentum by revisiting that previous work that you did and said, oh, okay, well, this focus wheel, I moved myself from here to there. And that's how I did it. And this was the new idea that I was going to lock in.
Yeah.
So let me just go ahead and start there, remind myself this is the new idea that I'm locking in about myself, and I'm going to make that choice. And you'll feel yourself walk right out of that room and into a new one that you're establishing.
Yeah, you're
Feels
starting
a lot better.
to construct a whole new room.
Totally.
Like the walls are coming up.
Right. And it's almost like as that new room is being built, the old room is being
destroyed.
Yeah, not necessarily
it's falling away.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be destroyed. It just becomes a place that you don't go anymore.
Right.
Because you've got a new place to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of this vibrational work comes down to, really, is I've got a new place to go.
Yeah.
I'm building a new place to go.
Well,
that feels a lot better than that.
I love how you explained it with where we used to live in West Texas. You and I have always wanted to live by the beach. So that's why we're here in Sarasota. We're by all of these beautiful beaches. But in West Texas, there's not a beach anywhere close by.
No. Lake Nasworthy.
Yeah, which
it's a UTI waiting to happen.
It's nicknamed Lake Nasty Water, if that tells you anything.
Yeah.
So you kind of related it to that. You said, well, we used to live in this town in Texas. We used to live in West Texas. And those houses that we lived in are still there. It's not that they were destroyed, but we just don't go back there anymore.
Right.
We live here now.
Absolutely.
So it's the same kind of thing. Like, even though you lived somewhere before, it doesn't mean that you ever have to go back there again.
Yeah.
Or even if you do go back and revisit it, it doesn't mean that you're not going to go back to your new home.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to stay there permanently.
Yeah.
And you're going to notice really quickly that
when you're there,
you're there and you want to be somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So I really like how you jumped there, because really that's sort of the how-to that people are looking for is, when I'm in one of these rooms, it doesn't feel good. Like, what do I do? How do I go about making a different choice? Because I feel like sometimes that doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like I'm locked in that room.
Yeah.
And the more vibrational momentum that dominant thought pattern has within you, it can feel like that. It can feel like you're locked in there.
Yeah, totally. So just giving yourself the space and grace to acknowledge that you're in the room, but then walk out of the room.
Yeah, make a different choice.
Right.
And establish something different. So that's a lot of vibrational work. And there are tons of processes, tons of things that you can do to rebuild a vibration, to rebuild a thought pattern,
to reframe
a trigger.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens a lot, is something will happen and that'll trigger that previous vibration. And then you
Yeah.
find yourself in that room again. It's like, oh man, I'm in this room again.
Yeah. Even like a song that plays on the radio
Yeah.
that can have an anchor that takes you back to a specific feeling that you had whenever you were listening to that song when it first came out, or when you listened to it way back when you broke up with somebody or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got these different things going on. So
Yeah.
at the same time that you can allow this new standard to make you aware whenever you're in rooms that you don't want to be in,
Mm-hmm.
you can also use that to positively reinforce rooms that you want to be in.
Right.
So whenever you feel good, whenever you're feeling amazing, and I think a lot of people kind of miss the opportunity to do this, partially because they're not striving for a standard, but whenever you feel that above the green line emotional state, and you see what you're focused on and how you're focused on it and just how you feel, right?
Yeah.
I think making the conscious decision to anchor that in and be like, this is a room I want to return to. You can do that by consciously being aware that you're in the room. And then what I personally like to do is I like to identify all the elements that are present that are things that I could essentially reproduce in my mind.
Mm.
So I have a good story about that. I was actually in Barton Springs in Austin, Texas. There's this really cool giant grassy hill that leads down to a natural spring.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful, and it's called Barton Springs. And I remember one day I was there. It's a really long time ago, probably. It's more than a decade ago. And I was sitting there, and I just remember the warm breeze wrapping around my body, and I remember looking down at the water, and I remember feeling the sun on my skin. And I just remember I was in this place where I was just feeling really grateful for my life and really grateful to be there and really grateful that places like that even existed. And so cool that we could live in a physical universe where I'm in a physical body having this experience and I'm people watching. I'm looking at all these people around me that are also generally there kind of to enjoy themselves. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I am just sort of in this whole ambiance. And I just told myself, you know what? I want to lock this in. I want to lock this in. And I'm going to intentionally capture this moment so that I can reproduce it anytime I want in my mind in the future because I'm enjoying this so much. And I did that. And to this day, you saw how clearly I described that situation. Vibrationally, when I activate that within myself, there's even more depth and capacity within it. It's wider and deeper than I can explain in words
Right.
because I'm activating the vibrational signature of that moment within me.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
I'm going to that room on purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're
And it's like,
activating that really incredible feeling on purpose.
yeah, absolutely.
With purpose.
With purpose. So I think that's actually sort of the how to. Once you've established a new standard, now you're going to be anchoring in these things that feel really good. And whenever you find things that don't feel really good, you're going to recondition your mind around those things with new frameworks, new thoughts that then can become beliefs that then can be validated by manifestation that then can become truth in your life and then ultimately become a part of your identity. And ultimately, an above the green line life is this unshakable identity where you've intentionally built so many of these rooms for yourself that you just feel like you live in this mansion of awesomeness.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I feel like when you don't have that standard and you go back to the standard of mass consciousness, then it's so easy to just tap into all of the negativity and all of the gossip and all of the things that really don't feel good at all.
Totally.
But if you intentionally squeeze the joy juice out of those moments in your life where they do feel really good and it's really satiating, then it's incredible how all of those things that you might have a below the green line vibration around either take care of themselves or you just don't put nearly as much focus on them because now you're focused on all of the things that bring you joy
Totally.
and bring you above the green line.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you and I have been talking about a lot lately is how your principles need to be able to take weight.
Right.
So this all sounds great,
Yeah.
but what happens whenever you have weird stuff come up in your reality that just seems to thrust you below the green line? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is actually a story I alluded to earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to talk about like sort of a real life scenario of how we do things like this day to day.
Right.
So recently, we got a traffic ticket in the mail from Italy, which is a trip that we took well over a year ago.
Yeah, it's like a year and a half ago now.
Year and a half ago. Yeah, and it was like, first off, it took like a really long time to show up. Well, before we knew it, I guess they could sell that debt to a debt collector. They think it's a debt. Anyway, so I get this letter in the mail from a debt collector in the United States saying Italy says you owe them money from this little province, right?
Yeah.
And apparently you were on some street that you weren't supposed to be on, but you can't read Italian, dude. So you don't know what's going on, right?
That sucks.
So that sucks. So then it's like, okay, well, this is a piece of paper that's actually on my desk. This is something that I actually have to deal with. And I received this piece of paper on the weekend when I wasn't able to actually contact the office until Monday.
So you couldn't take any action around it.
So I couldn't take any action around it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to have a good weekend with my kids, especially having been out of pocket for a few days on a business trip.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to have a great time with my family, right? But this event, basically, it just felt like I got body slammed below the green line, you know? Because I'm like, because essentially there are all these ideas. So
and triggers, because you used, like, at one point you had the consolidated debt thing where you had a bunch of credit cards that you consolidated and then had to pay off over time. So you had these debt collectors coming at you in another lifetime, it felt like.
Oh, totally. Let's talk about triggers. Like, so I remember a long time ago, traffic tickets would be like devastating.
Yeah, like that
me,
would be
you know what I mean?
your entire net worth.
Yeah, exactly.
That
like
would go to the payment of
literally
that traffic ticket.
Yeah, you get a speeding ticket and you're going to have to figure out how to come up with that few $100s. Like, oh my gosh, you know, it's this big thing. And then debt collectors, I remember I've had experience in the past where things would show up in your mailbox and it's just like, what? Where did this come from? But then back then, I wasn't financially where I am now. So when things in the mail came like that, it was like devastating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like devastating. So I keep saying this word, devastating. And it's like, oh my gosh, like that's really weird. So ultimately, there was a time in my life where there was a room that I would go to every time something like that would sort of happen. And it was like, oh my gosh, it would just feel so demoralizing, disempowering. Like, oh my gosh, I just thought I was catching some momentum. I just thought I was getting ahead. And then wham, something like this happens, you know?
Yeah.
And so
trigger.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, bing. And so
back in the room,
right? Or you can make a decision to say, you know what? I don't want to be in that room this weekend, you know?
Yeah. So you got home from this business trip on Saturday and you see this piece of mail there that triggers you, puts you back in that room, and you made a choice.
Totally. So I made a choice. I didn't want to live in that room all weekend, you know, just constantly going over like, what am I going to do? Who am I going to talk to? What do I need to do? Like, kind of thing. So I actually did a process that was pretty cool for me. And essentially, I just came up with sort of a system of categorizing how I felt around certain thoughts that would come to my mind, right? And I essentially came up with 3 columns. You could do this with 3 pieces of paper, but essentially there was like a very low emotional state. So essentially the process goes, I wrote at the top of the paper, I want to feel good about this situation. Because ultimately, everything we think we want is at some level because we believe we'll feel better in the having of it. I just want to be feeling good. I want to be focused on my kids and having a good weekend.
Which is such a powerful intention to say that to the universe, because then it allows the opportunity to open up, for you to feel good, for you to access those thoughts that allow you to feel better.
Absolutely. So I literally write that at the top of the paper. I want to feel good about this situation. And when thoughts came in, I would just basically write them in their corresponding category, whether it felt really bad, whether it felt really good, or whether it was kind of in the middle, because like in reality, whenever you're trying to identify these states and stuff, you're not going to be like, well, that's number 4 on the, you know what I mean? That's number 18. It's like, you're not going to be that granular, but there are certain thoughts that go, well, that definitely doesn't feel good, but it doesn't feel horrible. Just kind of like in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So I can give some examples, like the ones where basically, that's not fair. Can they even do that? That's not legal. How can somebody from another country hold me liable for a debt in the United States whenever they just say that I had some infection on the other side of the world?
I need justice.
I need justice. In America, we have due process. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on over there? Innocent until proven guilty. You can't just say I'm guilty. Anyway, there's this whole thought like loop that can go on, and it's all these different thoughts that are kind of around the same subject. It's so funny. You're like,
I'm a patriot.
Yeah. I was like, what's going on? This is ridiculous.
You come out
I'm calling the president.
You come out in your Captain America underwear.
Yeah. Holding a flag. Like, anyway, gets a little weird at our house. So I'm writing these things down, and it's like, obviously, it's just whenever you get on some of these negative thought loops, sometimes it'll just be like, ding, 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 like same thing, like, and it's because the law of attraction is going to bring you more thought that's in harmony with the thought that you're currently thinking. And especially whenever you continue to choose that trajectory, believe me, there's plenty of thought available inside of that vibration, right? There's plenty of thought available in mass consciousness, and it's all there. You can create more. So obviously, I don't want to feel there. I don't want to be there. I want to feel better about this. So I wasn't going to let myself stay there all day. So I'm like, okay, well, now that I've kind of spit out this stuff that feels bad, what would feel a little bit better? And the big one that moved me all the way to the other side was, you know what? There's always somebody out there that can help me. There's someone at that credit agency or that bureau, that debt collection or whatever it is. There's somebody at that debt collector that can help me. There's probably somebody in Italy that works at that municipality that could help me. There's probably somebody somewhere in that mix that has seen someone like me before that didn't know they broke some traffic law in Italy and wound up, with like a debt collector on them in America. So I'm sure someone is out there that could help me with that situation, because I'm probably not the first person this has happened to.
Yeah.
And, that made me feel a lot better. And whenever I kept going down that line, then it brought me into a place of positive expectation, of empowerment, of joy even, like, oh, it makes me so happy that there's probably somebody out there that can help me, And I've had these situations before. The people, and I kind of went down the line of people because I was like, you know what? People are good. The person on the other end of that phone line, whenever I call them, that's a good person. They probably have a family. They're probably somebody that really, if they can help, and I'm nice to them, they will probably genuinely want to help me. And I literally convinced myself of these things, like somebody out there genuinely wants to help me, right? And that was that side. So one thought that came that was sort of on the middle ground was, well, I have more than enough money to handle this, right? Which is great. We do have plenty of financial resources to be able to handle things like that now. But that still kind of dug into the, you're going to have to spend the money and that's not fair. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of side of that. So it didn't feel good enough to be on like the right side paper, like the above the green line paper.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel bad enough to call it like,
below.
it feels bad to think that I have enough money to deal with it. So it's kind of like a middle ground.
Yeah.
And so essentially I just did that process, writing those things out until I was really on the side of, you know what, there's somebody out there that can help me. People genuinely are good, and people are super nice, and they're helpful when they can be. And I do have plenty of financial resources to deal with this. So whenever I find those people, they can help me. And essentially, the fear around what's this going to do to my credit score? Like, I've worked really hard to build an 850 credit score. You know what I mean? Like, could this just wreck all the work I've done to move from where I was to where I am? Our credit score is still in the 800s, but
disempowering.
And it's like, yeah, it's like, so that fear-based whole side was quelled by making this decision to do this process and essentially build a new room for myself.
A new framework, a new anchor.
Exactly. New framework, new anchor. And for the rest of the weekend, whenever that subject would come up in my mind, I just chose to go to that other room.
So powerful.
I made it all the way through the weekend.
Yeah.
Feeling empowered and good about the situation. So that's kind of like a real life example of like, what does it look like? And what did that process take? How long did it take? Less than 5 minutes? 5 minutes?
5 minutes to have your entire weekend back? That's the funny thing about these things. Like, you get into alignment, and that allows you to enjoy everything else.
Yeah.
For the rest of the weekend, the rest of the week, the rest of your month.
Totally.
It's amazing how just a little bit of alignment work can go so far.
Absolutely.
And that story actually reminds me of the story from Curacao whenever we were on our cruise and we were jumping off of the cliffs there.
Oh, yeah.
And you had on your Apple Watch.
Yeah.
And it was a brand new gift that the family had gone in on to buy you this brand new, beautiful Apple Watch.
Yep.
And it was like $500.
Yeah.
So, like, we don't really buy extravagant gifts a whole lot. So, to us, that was like a special thing. It was like a family gift to you for your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And we're on this trip and we're cliff diving off of this thing. And we're like, at the end of the day, we look at the watch, at my watch. So we're jumping off of these cliffs and we're getting ready to head back to the cruise ship to get back on the ship because it's time to go. We had a full day on the island. And you look down and you realize that your watch isn't on your wrist.
Right.
And you're like, did I even bring my watch? What, like, do I have it? And so we look back at photos from the beginning of the day. Turns out you did have your watch on whenever we started adventuring, and now you don't have it on. And we look all around the island. We're asking everyone if they've seen it. Long story short, we couldn't find it, and we have to head back to the cruise ship. But I feel like you did a lot of vibrational work in the taxi.
I did.
On the way back to the cruise ship.
Well, this was really funny because it was actually an Abraham Hicks cruise.
Right.
Which is funny because obviously, like, if you're ever going to commit to living a high vibe life, it's got to be on an Abraham Hicks cruise.
Yeah.
But I remember just feeling so disempowered and super bummed, not because I couldn't replace the Apple Watch with money, but because it was a very meaningful gift from the whole family, and it was this whole thing,
Yeah.
And so I was feeling really disempowered, really kind of bummed, and I was just feeling this like horrible negative emotion. And this negative emotion essentially was so bad, but I just reminded myself in the moment, oh, wait a minute. This negative emotion is just an indication that
it's just guidance.
It's just guidance telling me that the way that I'm focused on this is not how my source is focused on this. So then I just made this decision to start thinking above the green line thoughts. And I was like, you know what's crazy? We live in this digital world where it's actually possible that my Apple Watch could make it back to me. And we had a friend in the car with us, and you guys are just looking at me like, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear this one. You know what I mean? Like here goes Jordan. Like you're gonna reframe losing your Apple Watch in the ocean on an island out in the middle of nowhere. All right, let's hear this. And I was like, well, no, look, hear me out. It is actually possible because there's tracking on the watch itself.
Yeah.
My phone, whenever I get back to Wi-Fi, could actually probably tell me where it is. And it is actually possible that I might be able to find the thing. And if I was able to find the thing, we have this global communication whatever that the watch could ultimately make it back to me. I forgot exactly what I said around the whole thing, but I got into this loop.
The reason why what you said reminded me of that story is because it was kind of the same framework of people are good. I believe people are good.
Right.
And we have this whole like web of communication. We have all of these ways to communicate with each other. And I truly believe that people are really good.
Right.
So if somebody has the desire to get this watch back to me, I believe that it's possible.
Totally. So this is the craziest thing in the world. So obviously, it's kind of like, that's nice, Jordan. You just lost your watch in the ocean, and it's more expensive than most people's like annual salary on this island. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, or at least monthly salary on this island. Like
sure, someone's going to find it in this third world country and just send it back to you.
You think an islander is going to find an Apple device and just send it back to you in the mail?
And the taxi driver actually said that to you.
Right.
He was like, oh, like it's gone forever now.
Yeah, you're
toast,
He
actually told us that.
Yeah, and then he gave me a story where he lost a gold chain in the ocean and
never got it back.
Never got it back, of course. So anyway, I'm just like steadfast on this because I'm like, my intention here is to feel good, and it feels a lot better to think that way. Yeah. So we get back to almost on the cruise ship, and I wanted to talk to the kids one more time. So we pull up our phones and we're FaceTiming.
Right. We
Mom.
FaceTimed your mom.
We're FaceTiming the kids and we're talking to them. And my mom is like, awesome, but she just like
she goes, I just got a WhatsApp message.
I just got a WhatsApp message
from Curacao.
Something about an Apple Watch. Pfft, that's ridiculous. But what's funny is she actually voiced it. So I'm sitting there and I go, hold up, Mom. I just lost my Apple Watch cliff diving in Curacao. You need to go find that message. So she goes and finds the message, and it was an islander who worked at a little smoothie shop, which was like a tiny little smoothie shop, one of the only things on that side of the island. And apparently some tourist had found my Apple Watch and given it to her just in case they could find it. And then she went into the Apple Watch, found my mom, because it said mom. You know, my mom's in my phone, it's mom.
Yeah.
And found her phone number and sent her a WhatsApp message from Curacao to try to facilitate getting it back to me. This is the craziest thing. So I'm like having to get on the cruise ship, and I'm like, is there any way that we can figure out how to get this back to me now? But we had to leave within an hour, and it was like the answer was no. It was like hours away on the other side of the island.
Yeah.
So we get on this cruise ship, and this wonderful girl who like is just genuinely trying to help me.
Doesn't know us at all.
Facilitates getting the watch back to me via DHL, to the point that she literally had to borrow her mom's credit card and spend $60 to ship this thing back to me. And she did that before I was able to give her any money for anything. We're out of service, you know, communication is spotty. And it literally still blows my mind to this day that this girl borrowed $60 on her mom's credit card to send me a watch before I ever extended any financial resources or anything to her. She had no idea we were rich. I mean, I guess like some people show up with an Apple Watch on Curacao from a cruise ship. Like there's a likelihood. But the thing is, she had extended herself and put herself out, you know? And it just literally exploded my brain. But what was really crazy was when it all came full circle, and you were like, dude, you in the taxi. Just refusing to believe that you've lost your Apple Watch in this third world country is what led to that. And ultimately
what?
Ultimately, the watch lands on our doorstep in a DHL package, and I pull it out and I put it on my wrist, and I'm like, oh my God, from the depths of the ocean in a third world country, I am wearing my Apple Watch right now. That is vibrational harmony with your desire. Yes. It's like so you look at these crazy thoughts, like what we were just talking about, like with that positive thought loop, right? Yeah. People are good. People want to help me. Definitely. You know? And so like I have built in these things all the way into my identity where I'm a person that people like to help. And this just totally validated that to the point that honestly, I just feel like my vibration exploded so big in that moment that like I just fundamentally believe that now. Like that's the way it all goes down.
Our friend even said, like, only you guys, like, only Jordan Buckingham would be able to get his watch back
from the depths of the ocean in a third world country.
Yeah. It's just like, she said, if I had any doubt before about conscious creation, it's gone.
Yeah,
like,
it's got to happen now.
I saw it in action.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I'm a believer.
And that's a great example of just, that's what happens when you have a standard, an above the green line standard. You're not going to sit there and waller in thought that feels bad all day, all week, all month. You know,
and let everyone else validate why you should feel that way.
Yeah. So if I'd gone the other route, I probably wouldn't have been in vibrational harmony with the watch coming back to me. And the rest of my life, that would have been the Apple Watch that I lost.
Right.
20 years from now, I could be talking about how I lost my family gift on cliff diving in Curacao.
It would have been a trigger.
It would have been a trigger, and I would have been sad and alone and intoxicated. I don't know. It's just like so crazy and numb, just numb to the world. Obviously, we don't go there, but you know. Yeah. So these things, whenever we talk about them, they're really just to provide examples of what consciously choosing to live above the green line can do for you in your life.
And these are reminders for us as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we forget this stuff, and then all of a sudden we'll remind ourselves of it, and it's like, oh my gosh, I created that.
Yeah, 100%.
This is amazing. I actually am really powerful. I'm not going to waller over there where it feels really bad when I have the ability to tap into that.
Absolutely. So live your life with the standard of being above the green line. Whenever you find thought that is not in harmony with that, do the work to rebuild it, rebuild that room, and go to that other room instead. And especially if you have the opportunity to catch something early and rebuild that room quickly, like I did with the Apple Watch, take that opportunity to do that, because at the end of the day, all it's going to do is put you in this more perpetual above the green line emotional state. And we talk about it all the time. Emotional states attract the conditions that support emotional states. So the more that you're in those high-flying emotional states based on dominant thought processes that are supportive of those emotional states, that those emotional states are indicators of those dominant thought loops that serve you, the more you're going to have that type of thought show up, and the more you're going to have the universe mirror that vibration in your reality.
Totally. I feel like one of the most powerful superpowers that you could develop is being able to reframe things in a way that feels good to you.
Totally.
So create frameworks that work for you and anchor you above the green line.
I totally agree with that.
So the more that you can practice that, the more superhuman you'll be at doing that.
Totally. And speaking of superhuman, we've got Vibration Fit Cinematic Universe on the way. Just a little throwing
hint,
it out there.
Little wink, wink.
Wink,
I can't wink, by the way.
There are some cool things.
One of the worst winkers and whistlers.
You're a good winker. I like your winks.
You make fun of me for it.
They look really good.
They don't.
You
look
really
good
doing it.
Thanks for the fake encouragement.
Yeah, I like it. But yeah, so we've got some really cool stuff in the works where some of these personas, some of these superhero characters may be showing up for your viewing enjoyment. So
we're super excited about it.
Stay tuned for some of that.
For the crazy.
Yeah, totally.
So in closing, would you like to go over the how-to points that we went over in this episode?
So to wrap up with the how-to on this episode, number one, choose an above the green line life. That really is the first step to setting a vibrational standard for your own life. Number two, when you find things that make you feel good, anchor that in as much as you can. Develop it as much as you can. Build on it as much as you can. Build those rooms that Vanessa was talking about that you can go back to again and again and again and again and activate that good feeling emotion. And number three, whenever you find things that don't put you above the green line, thoughts, ideas, frameworks that are taking you to a room that doesn't feel very good, consciously choose to rebuild those frameworks and establish something new so that you can, over the course of time, build this beautiful above the green line mansion.
Totally. I love that. So when you find those feelings or when you find those thoughts that do feel good, make those your new anchors. And that will anchor you back to your new room that you're constructing.
Absolutely. So with that,
this is so awesome. I love all of this.
Yeah, me too.
Some really great stuff. So with that, we are sending love and light to all.